What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix for Week 13 of the 2021 CFL season. I'm Ryan Coop here with your wide receiver preview for week number 13. If you missed it, go back and check out. I previewed the quarterbacks and the running backs earlier this week as well. And stay tuned later today. I'll be taking a look at the defense options. And then, of course, on Friday, I will go through all the depth charts for the week to help get you set to lock in your lineups for week number 13. But let's go team by team here and take a look at the receiver options. Give them the green, yellow, or red light based on a number of factors. And it starts off, we've got a 4-game week. It starts off with a doubleheader Friday night, which kicks off with the Ottawa Red Blacks and the Calgary Stampeders facing off for the first time this season. And let's talk Ottawa first of all. And here are the options at receiver for Ottawa for this week. Notably missing, Devontae Dedmon did miss last game due to injury. Presumably will be missing this game again. So the most expensive option on the slate here comes with Kenny Stafford at $5,459. If you're looking to get 2.5 points per $1,000 out of him, which is what I consider to be full value to help you get a 100-point week, you want to get 13.6 points. How has he fared in 5 games so far this year? He's put up an average of 8.7. Recent performances for Stafford include last week he put up against Hamilton a 7.1. The game before that against Montreal, 13.5. He's also had 12.4, 10.5, and his first game in the lineup he had 0, where I chalk that up to them getting him acquainted into the lineup. But Stafford, I'm saying stay away, and I can talk about Ottawa as a whole here. I'm saying stay away from most Ottawa receivers because the team has just not looked great. They're trying a lot of different things with, Caleb Evans played a good chunk of the game last time. Then Duck Hodges came in the second half and played part of the game. It's hard to get a whole ton of consistency going with that. I don't like spending a ton of money on Kenny Stafford where he hasn't really broken a huge game yet to hit full value, and I think it's going to be tough with the matchup against Calgary. Same thing goes for RJ Harris, who's at $5,296. Pretty similar price point. He's averaged 8 points a game on 11 games this year. Has a couple where he's hit value, but in his last 3 games, 5.1, 1.6, and 7.9. So for the same reason, I say stay away from RJ Harris. The only higher priced option I may consider this week is Ryan Davis at $5,447. You're basically looking for the same total you got that you're looking for from Stafford. And he's got a decent average, the best out of any of these options for Ottawa on the season. 12-point average in 11 games. And the reason I potentially like Davis is, yes, 2 of his last 3 games have been a disappointment. 2.2 and 4.4 in 2 of those. But 3 of his last 5 have also been highly successful, with all of them being over 15 points. And he had a number of games earlier this year. Look, Ryan Davis has been the go-to receiver for Ottawa, and last week was a down week for him, but I could see them trying to bounce back and course correct that a little bit. So if you're going to go with any option out of Ottawa, I would say Davis is probably the best one available to you there. I don't like Nate Behar as an option. I did earlier this year, but in most of his recent games, yes, last week he put up 9.6, hit full value there. But in 3 of his last 5 games, he has put up under 2 points. Inconsistency and not putting much of a total up there for you there. Michael Klukas, if he does get in the starting lineup, hasn't done a whole ton yet this year and is a backup on most weeks. And then the only other option potentially is Terry Williams. No, not the Terry Williams that plays for Edmonton. This is Ottawa's Terry Williams. No trade has happened there. Played 1 game last week, took the return duties with Devontae Dedmon being out of the lineup, and put up 5.1 points. Look, if there's anything Ottawa's done well this year, it's special teams. It's the return game, it's the kicking game. So maybe there's a cheap play if you're really looking to save money there with going with a return option in Terry Williams. But it is not a pick I would lock in for Week 13. Looking at the Calgary side of things, we get the joy of going through the plethora of different receiver options for Calgary, and that is why that statement right there is why none of them are green light options for me this week and most weeks, because it's really hard to bank on which Calgary receivers getting the ball. And most games we're seeing 7, 8, 9 guys getting in for some good catches in there and taking them away from one another. There's never one guy that gets just a massive load of targets his way. I don't like Kamar Jordan at over $10,000. 25.5 points is the threshold you're looking to hit for 2.5 per thousand. Last two games, 4.3 and 9.3 for him. So it might be tempting to take a lot of Ottawa receivers for people because of the matchup with Ottawa, and we've seen how much Ottawa's struggled defensively this year. But Calgary's offense and their passing game also hasn't really taken off much this year, so something's going to give either way, and I would feel more comfortable banking on one of the cheaper options to give you value than slotting Kamar Jordan into your lineup. I think Josh Huff is a potential play because he has had a decent floor for most of this season. He had back in week number 7 against Hamilton, he had just 3 points, but other than that, every game he's played since week number 2 has been over 11.5 points. He has had one game of 17.8, a couple games over 15. So and with the good matchup against Ottawa, the potential for more of a passing game for Calgary, if it does take off, I think Huff could be a potential option. There's risk there because he hasn't consistently given you value and is one of the more expensive options, but I think he could deliver this week. I don't love Markeith Ambles as a play. His salary has dropped a good amount, which is makes it a bit more intriguing. But he's been so up and down over the last 6 weeks or so that it's been hard to slot him in. 1 week he's putting 16 points on the board, the next it's 3.3, the next it's 11.3. He had one under 2 points, a couple around 7 or 10. In there as well. So I would feel more comfortable at similar price point to go with a guy like Josh Huff than I would with Markeith Ambles. Hergy Mayala, averaging 4.9 points on the year, not worth that salary. Do not put him in your lineup. Richie Sindani, I think maybe for the first time this year, has moved up to yellow-white category, and this has come as a result of him out of nowhere kind of becoming a go-to receiver for the Stampeders. He has hit full value in 3 of his last 5 games. He did have 2 games against the Riders there in the middle where he did only put up 1.8 to 1.5, but 3 of his last 5 games have been 10.6, 12, and 17.4 point performances. And if you can get those out of a guy that's under $4,000, you're happy with that total you're getting. So potential play there. I'm still a bit skeptical on whether this is going to be consistent going forward for him, or if this is kind of a rare blip in the system, so to say, with Sindani getting the level of targets he's gotten. Malik Henry does return duties at times, also can get involved in the offense. He's averaged 7.3 points on the year. Last game he put up 9.3. Could be a potential play there as well, but I wouldn't bank on it because it seems Calgary does have their starting offense practicing, which is the 5 guys at the top of the chart here, all practicing this week, which means I could see Henry being a backup at receiver, and it's the main reason I'm saying stay away from any of the other 4 options on the chart here because I do not think they will be in starting roles for this week. Now, we're going to have to check the depth charts when they come out. Then they may already be out by the point in time this video is going out on Thursday. But if any of these cheaper options are available as a starter, like Sean Bain's been good in 2 games, Luther Hakunavanu's been good in 2 games, Nick Hawley's produced enough in 3. If they get starting roles, then yeah, they become decent plays there. But if they are in as a backup, I wouldn't necessarily bank on those totals and go that direction for a value play. Getting in the second game on Friday, the Hamilton Tiger Cats and the Edmonton Elks. Let's look at Hamilton first of all. The offense has seen a bit of a resurgence in recent weeks with successful games from quarterback Jeremiah Mazzoli, and makes for some good fantasy options available here. I don't like the high-priced ones. Braylon Addison, Brandon Banks. Addison has missed a couple days of practice this week and might not be ready to go for this game. And even if he is in the lineup, that 27-point total is just tough to hit. He's averaged 14.8 in his 3 games he's played this year, which is a long ways off from hitting 27. Also of note, the Elks do have one of the better passing defenses in the CFL, if you could believe it. So I'm a little more skeptical on the totals there. Brandon Banks, 10,162, same thing. High price. He hasn't had very much success this year. Last week, 10.9. His average on the year is 9.7. Salary is dropping, but still not worth it with Banks. 2 options I like this week, even with the tougher matchup against the Elks, are Jalen Acklin and Stephen Dunbar Jr. And it was a bit hard for me, not going to lie, to put Acklin back in the green-white category because I had him there a couple times earlier this year and I got burned by it. But the key difference in what sparked a resurgence for Jalen Acklin in recent weeks is the return of Jeremiah Mazzoli. He, in his last 2 games, has put up 21.6 and 15.8. In his first 2 games of the year, which were also with Mazzoli, 22.8 and 8.1. I think he had one more game in there back in week number 9 where he put up, with Mazzoli back in the lineup, 6.2. Other than that, his average is skewed downwards due to him not really producing as much when it was Evans or Watford at quarterback. So there's some connection there between Mazzoli and Acklin. And if Braylon Addison's going to be out of the lineup, expect potentially more targets going his way. Yeah, I think I got to move him back into the green-white category this week, even at the $6,557 price. Stephen Dunbar Jr. is an option I have to green-white. I mean, he's produced in 3 of his last 4 weeks, he's produced full value, and the only week he didn't was 10.5. He was just short on that one. He's averaging 11.2 in 8 games this year. Seems to be good for a touchdown. He's a go-to option near the end zone. He's a go-to option for a couple of catches and some solid yardage each and every week, and has been making a name for himself this year in that Hamilton offense. Tim White, I say yellow light on him. He's averaged exactly the total you want him to, 10.3 on the year. Last week he hit 11.4 and gave full value. The 3 games before that, all hovering around 7 points. So a bit cautious on him because outside of back in week 5 against Toronto where he put up over 20, he hasn't really hit more than 11.4 in a game on the year, which since then, which you don't really need him to hit. If he's a lot more than that, even if he's hitting that, he's giving you full value. So that could be a good play for you there. But with Stephen Dunbar Jr. being a similar price point and having some more success this year, I think I like that option a bit more. So I say yellow light on Tim White for this week. David Ungerer, 3.3 point average in 10 games on the year, not worth putting in your lineup. And Marcus Green did play 1 game, was out of the lineup last week. In that 1 game, he put up 5.6, but presumably either Frankie Williams will be back in the lineup returning kicks, or Brandon Banks will handle it like last week. I don't like the option of Marcus Green potentially getting in the lineup this week. Looking at the Edmonton side of things, the large part of this is stay away from any of the Elks because the offense has struggled and you never know what you're going to get out of them. In their past 2 games, we have seen them, only receiver to put up a total worth their value was Shai Ross, and he's the only one I am potentially recommending as a yellow light option for the week. And that is because he's got a pretty decent average, 8.3. His salary is still low enough where that's going to give you full value. And I'm not saying lock it in because you don't know who's going to get the ball. Taylor Cornelius kind of likes to spread it around. And we also need to factor in the fact that it looks like Armonte Edwards could be returning to the lineup for the first time since back in week number 2, I think it was. Armonte Edwards has been practicing this week, could be back in the starting lineup. Stay away from him. He played 2 games, got nothing done in either of those 2. Stay away from Greg Ellingson, who has had some down weeks for a large part of things in recent weeks. He had one big 25.6 against Ottawa, but other than that, 10.1 is his highest total in his last 5. Darrell Walker is just having a very down year by Darrell Walker standards this year. 9.4 average, not worth the $6,626 price. He has not hit a point total worth that value since week number 1 against Ottawa for Darrell Walker, so I say stay away from there. Tavon Smith, likewise, only 5.1 point average this year. Hasn't really broken out a big game. Mike Jones started the year very strong, but has tapered off in recent weeks. Hit 11 points back in week number 7 against Winnipeg, but other than that, in his recent games, his highest point total in 4 of his last 5 has been 5.7. Jalen Tolliver should be in a backup role, so I don't like that option there. He's consistently still gotten a couple of plays and hit around 4 points in 3 of his last 4 games, but that's still undervalued there. There are better value plays available than Jalen Tolliver. Getting into the Saturday games, the BC Lions and the Toronto Argonauts is where we start. And let's go to BC to begin with. Still no Lucky Whitehead in the lineup as he recovers from injury. Brian Burnham is the most expensive receiver option. And much the same as I mentioned with Edmonton, I think it's pretty safe to stay away from BC receivers for the most part. Burnham, a great receiver, but he's having a down year. Has hit under 8 points in 3 of his last 5 games. Even on his good days, he's hit 15.2, 16.3. Only once this year has he hit that 24.1 mark you're looking for. Devere Posey got into the lineup for his first game last week with BC this season. Put up just 1.4 points in that one. Disappointing day there. Javon Cotoy was a great option earlier in the season when he got in the lineup. And the floor is not bad on Cotoy. I mean, in his last, in all of his games this year that he's been a starter, his lowest total is 8.3. So the floor is not bad, but he hasn't broken a game that's worth value since his 2 matchups with Ottawa earlier in the year. Highest total in the last 5 games has been 11.3 as BC's offense has continued to struggle. Lamar Durant hasn't really gotten involved heavily in the offense yet. 3 games back from injury, 1.8, 9.3, and 6.8 there. I'll skip Keon Hatcher for a second, come back to that one. Shaq Johnson, 3.2 point average on 10 games this year. Jacob Scarfoni, 0.4 there. The only option I consider is Keon Hatcher, and that's because as I mentioned, the Lions have been on quite the slide. In their last 4 games, their last 5 games, the only receiver, not counting Lucky Whitehead, to hit full value 2.5 points per $1,000 on the week is Keon Hatcher, and he's hit that twice in his last 3 games, both against the Bombers, which are a bit of a tougher matchup. 9.4 and 8.2 with a 4.8 sandwiched in between. So Hatcher's averaged 8.4 points a game on the year. If BC is going to course correct things this week, and that's tough to bank on given all of the struggles they've gone through as of late. But if they do, I like Hatcher potentially as a cheaper option. I think he could be an intriguing value play this week for the Lions as they try to bounce back against the Argos at a $31.50 salary. Looking at the Toronto Argonauts, some potential options available here. I don't like Eric Rogers as a play at 87.60. He has missed a couple of games in a row, and I believe is close to getting back in the lineup, but you want 21.9 points out of him, and the Argos tend to spread the ball around decently well at receiver, so I think that's a lofty total for him to hit. He's been a guy that hasn't gotten a huge volume of targets. He's been a bit touchdown dependent when he's been in the lineup, and that's hard to necessarily bank on. You're spending that much money just hoping the touchdowns get you enough points. So I say stay away from Eric Rogers. Ricky Collins Jr. is a yellow light to me. 7,471 price point is what you're looking at with Collins Jr. 18.7 points is the 2.5 range. He's averaged 11.6 on this year. He's had a couple of good games. Last 2 weeks, 14.8 and 15.5. He had a couple down weeks before that, and then the 2 weeks before that, around 14 and 15.1. So 4 of his last 6 games, we've seen him hover around the 14, 15 point range, getting close to that 2 points per $1,000, but he hasn't really broken out for that big game that's going to give you the at least 18.7. So I'm cautious on Ricky Collins Jr., especially if Eric Rogers gets back in the lineup, takes some of the targets there, potentially, at a very expensive salary of $7,400. I'm not locking that one in necessarily, but if the matchup against BC's defense, who has given up a lot through the air in recent weeks, is tempting. Devaris Daniels saying stay away there. That is... he is a very up and down pick. When he has a good week, it's a good pick. But more often than not, in 4 of his last 6 games, his highest total in those has been 7. He did have a 16.7 and an 11 in there, but more often than not, not worth your value for Devaris Daniels. Chandler Worthy's a yellow light at 5,542. He averages 12 points a game on the year. You're looking for 13.9. I like Chandler Worthy, but last week I think I locked him in as a green light. He put up 9.4 points, which was a couple shy of the value I was hoping for out of him. Last 4 games has been up, down, up, down. He's had 2 games at 22.1 and 2 games under 10 in those. So it's been hit and miss with Chandler Worthy, and so I think justify that as a yellow light. He may hit a great total for you on the week, but he could be coming in at a bit of a disappointment. The talk of the town for the Argos the past few weeks has been Curley Gittins Jr., who is all of a sudden becoming McLeod Bethel Thompson's favorite target at receiver, it seems. 3 of his last 4 games he's hit full value, 13.8, 17.5, and 19.6. He did, to be fair, have a down week with 1.9 there in between, but that was a week where everybody on the Argos struggled. He's getting a large volume of targets. He's putting up weeks of over 100 yards, unlike earlier in the year where you had to kind of just bank on touchdowns to be worth it for him. He's getting the yards, he's getting the catches, and I think he's a great play at a midpoint salary once again this week. If you're looking for a cheap value play, again, good matchup with the BC Lions, and Damien Jean-Pierre, if he gets some usage in that offense, should be a good play available to you. He last week was a disappointment at 2.4 points, but that doesn't make or break your week when you spend $2,500 and only get that out of him. That's 3 points shy of your 100-point week that he puts you there, that maybe you make up at another position. But what he has done in the 3 games prior to that is given you full value, 13.1, 10.6, and 6.9. So potentially good play there. Have to see what the depth chart looks like if Eric Rogers gets back in. And also there is potential for it to be a down week for him. But I think he is one of the better value plays on the slate for week 13. Deshaun Brissett, stay away there. 1.3 points in average on the season is typically a backup option. Getting in the final game of the week, Saskatchewan and Montreal. Let's talk about the Riders here first. They've got a bunch of new receivers who played their first game last week, and I thought Duke Williams would potentially have a big game in his first game there. Thought Shaq Evans would potentially have a big game in his first game back from injury. But it was Kyron Moore who surprised us a little bit by putting up 18.6. I thought he would take a step back with these other guys getting more of a share of the targets, but they seem to lean on Moore a little bit. And they also seem to lean on Braden Lenius, which was a big surprise to me. Because in the past couple of weeks, they had kind of gone away from him a little bit, but it was all Braden Lenius early in that game for Saskatchewan as he put up 13.4 and hit his full value. The guys in yellow here are your starting receiver crew for the Riders, and I'm saying be cautiously optimistic on all of them. I think this is going to be a great game between Saskatchewan and Montreal, a very well contested game from both sides, and I think there could be some fantasy points to go around here. The only reason I'm not locking any one of these guys specifically into the lineup is because I don't know what the target share is going to look like for the Riders this week. Williams and Evans didn't get a ton their way in their first game back, but was that just kind of easing them into the lineup? Are they going to get more of a heavy load this week? We can't know for sure until we see the game being played. If they do get more targets their way, then that drops Moore back down, in my opinion. Then Schaefer Baker, Lenius also. Lenius was a bit of a surprise to me as the go-to receiver last week for the Riders. Schaefer Baker, great season earlier this year in a lot of games, but in 3 of his last 4 has been under 6 points. So potentially good plays with any of these. They range from high-priced in Duke Williams to pretty good value plays in Lenius or Schaefer Baker at a middle point option. But I think any of them could be successful, and I think any of them could be disappointments this week. And there's not particularly one of these guys that I'm honing in on as a go-to option here. And then other potential options, I say stay away from Justin McInnis and also Rashard Davis. McInnis is going to be a backup receiver. Davis did handle return duties last week, did just put up 3.1 points there. So that's how I view the Riders this week. And to close things out, looking at the Montreal Alouettes, much the same here. No particular option that I say, yes, lock it into your lineup. You kind of got to put Eugene Lewis and Jake Weineke both as yellow lights every week because they can put up really big performances for you, but because they can do that, their price is so expensive that if they put up middle point performances or a disappointment, it is going to hurt your fantasy lineup. And we saw that play out no more than last week where a lot of people were probably debating, do I go Eugene Lewis, do I go Jake Weineke? Those that went Eugene Lewis were super happy with a 34.6 point week out of him. I think that might be the top fantasy performance on the year. I guess Kenny Lawler had over 200 receiving yards one game and a couple touchdowns. That would have been the highest. But 34.6 for Lewis last week, and many people put Weineke in their lineup. Touchdown King puts one up almost every week. He put up 0 points, and if you get that at that salary, that is a big hurt to your lineup. So I think either of these are potential big play options when it comes to fantasy. Lewis has had 3 games in his last 7 where he's put up 25 or more points, which is really going to help your week. But he has also had 3 games in there where he's put up under 13, which is going to hurt it at that price. Jake Weineke, much the same, 0 points last week, but 24.4 the game before that. He's put up some in the kind of 14 to 17 range, a couple over 23. So neither of these is particularly options I'd love to lock into the lineup. The more intriguing one that I'd probably lean to is Weineke, to be honest. Just because I think that 0 last week was such an anomaly, and I think that's something that Montreal is going to try to course correct for a little bit this week. And it comes with the benefit that Weineke's salary has dropped almost $1,500 from what it was the week before. So Lewis's salary is pretty high. Weineke, I think, could hit that 22.5 for you, and I would recommend him as the better of the two options this week, based on that. But hey, if Lewis has a good week, he could put you up a massive performance like he did last week. Stay away from Quan Bray. Last 3 games for him, all 2.48 and 2.4. Hasn't been putting the totals up. Averages 8 on the year. Dante Absher got back into the lineup and handled return duties last week. Just put up 0.8 points in that regard. The way they do returns in Montreal, they have defensive backs like Greg Reed handling some of the return duties as well. So it won't be a full job there. I would stay away from Dante Absher. Kayon Julian Grant, 2.7 points last week. Most weeks on the season, he's undervalued there. 2.2 points is his average. And potential option if you're looking for a value play that I kind of like is Reggie White Jr. because he should presumably be getting a starting spot again this week with BJ Cunningham still out. Put up 4.6 points last week, which wasn't too far off from his value. But I saw a couple plays early in that game where, the Alouettes tried to go deep balls to Reggie White Jr. And if they would have connected on at least one of those, we're talking about a whole different week for him. We're talking at over 10 points at least on the week. So, yeah, 2,500, low risk play, potential good option there. I love the option, potentially, of Reggie White Jr. It is always a risk. We've seen one game from him. In that game, Weineke, usually the go-to option for the Alouettes, didn't get the ball very much. So will White Jr. still get the ball when they kind of course correct a little and give the ball to Jake a little more often? So those are the options for Montreal, and those are the options for all the teams at receiver for week number 13. Tough week this week. I feel like normally I have a lot more green light options for the week, but it's a little bit hard this week given some of the matchups. I think there's still some good green light options available to you there though, and I think there's some that I marked as a yellow light that are definitely intriguing plays as well. So those are your receiver potential plays for week number 13. Go back also and check out the quarterbacks and the running backs to help you set your lineups at those positions, and stay tuned later today. I'll have your defensive preview out as well, and on Friday I'll have the depth chart update on all of these games, and perhaps we'll see some other players move up to the green light category based on how those shape out. Do all the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you liked and what you didn't. If you have any fantasy questions, put them in the comments section or tweet them at me at CooperTrooper42 on Twitter. Link to that's in the description. And if you want to play CFL Fantasy alongside myself and other viewers, there's a link in the description as well to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix group over on the official CFL Fantasy site. You can play alongside myself and other viewers this week and every week throughout the 2021 CFL season. As always, thanks for watching. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.